Welcome to the 2025 Housing Element and General Plan Annual Progress Report webinar. We will begin at 11:02.
All right, everybody, looks like we're ready to start. Welcome to the 2025 Annual Progress Report webinar, hosted jointly by us at HCD alongside the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, LCI. I hope everybody had a good holiday weekend and we're allowing you to ease back into work by listening to this presentation. My name is Isaac O'Connell. I'm a housing data specialist working on APRs with HCD. Kevin Rolfness, who I'm sure a lot of you have worked with in previous years on your APRs, is also here today, as well as Fidel Herrera, who's our Housing Element Implementation Section Chief at HCD. And from LCI, we have Assistant Planner Nils Jepson, as well as Policy Programs Manager Patricia Kennedy, who will be here to present on the General Plan Annual Progress Report. So to walk through a little bit of what we're going to cover today, first, us at HCD, we will present on the Housing Element APR. The bulk of this, the most important portion of this, will be a detailed walkthrough of the APR form that Kevin is going to lead. We heard a lot of feedback from jurisdictions that this would be a really useful resource to be able to reference as you're filling out your own APR forms, to see somebody going through the ins and outs of doing the form themselves. So not only will Kevin lead this walkthrough today, but the recording will be posted on our APR website for you to reference when you're filling out your own APRs. After that, we'll toss it over to LCI. They will walk you through the ins and outs of the general plan APR process, and then we will hold at least 15 minutes for question and answer at the end of the presentation. Regarding Q&A, please use the Zoom Q&A feature in your Zoom window to type and send in any questions as they come up throughout the webinar. Farzad Mashoud, who's our Data and Innovation Unit Chief at HCD, as well as Yvette Vernon, our Data Team Manager, will be monitoring that Q&A and helping respond to your questions throughout the presentation. So to start with just some general overview, maybe for those of you who are new to the APR process or anyone who would like a little refresher, statute requires that each jurisdiction, California, prepares an annual progress report on its housing progress and the implementation of its housing element using forms and definitions adopted by HCD. So for 2025, the APR reporting timeline is going to look like this. We'll begin accepting submissions on January 2nd, 2026, which is a Monday. And the statutory deadline, as always, is April 1st for all jurisdictions to submit their APRs. So in between these two dates, you'll notice on this timeline, at the end of each month during this submission period, we'll be hosting office hours to provide technical assistance to you on your APR forms. So during these times, Kevin and I will be online to work with any jurisdiction staff who would like to join these sessions and ask any questions that you might have to help you fill out and complete your APRs. We want to remind people that if you miss the April 1st deadline, we will keep following up with you and work closely with you to ensure you can submit your APR as soon as possible. But timely submission of your APRs is essential for eligibility for different HCD incentives and grant programs. as well as exemption from SMAP, the Streamlined Ministerial Approval Process program. So really, really try your hardest not to miss that April 1st deadline and to get your APRs in as soon as possible. Now I'm going to go over some of the stuff that's new on the 2025 form. So if you have done the APRs many, many times, this is the part that you really need to pay attention to. So firstly, the income categories used to classify unit affordability have been expanded by AB 3039 to include acutely low income and extremely low income as new categories. So previously, all units that were affordable to households making under 50% of AMI, you would have reported these on your APR as very low income. But now with these new categories, any units that are affordable to households making up to 15% of area median income, those will be reported as acutely low income. And then any units affordable to households making above 15%, but up to 30% AMI, those will be reported as extremely low income, with this 50 to 30% range being the new threshold for a very low income unit that you'll report. Regarding how this impacts the measurement of RHNA progress for jurisdictions, we know that for the cycles you all will be reporting on for the 2025 reporting period, you did not receive regional housing needs allocations for acutely low and extremely low income units. So since you'll be using these new categories to report on unit affordability starting this year on the APR, we've made sure that the extremely low or acutely low income units you report will still count towards your progress, towards your very low income RHNA targets. All of this will be displayed accurately in Table B of the APR form. We also wanted to link on this slide, because we will send out the slides following the presentation. We wanted to provide some links to useful resources regarding unit affordability. So the first is the 2025 state income limits that HCD publishes. These will have by county the specific threshold for each of these affordability levels or income levels. And we also link to the APR website for the affordability calculator, which is a tool that we provide that allows you to input specific information about projects to return their affordability levels for purposes of reporting on your APRs. The calculator has been updated to reflect not only the 2025 state income limits, but also these two new income categories. Next, we have new statutory requirements for reporting newly listed historical designations in your jurisdiction. So how this is going to work is for any sites, if any sites in your jurisdiction have been newly designated within the reporting year on either a national, state, or local register of historic places, you will need to report those sites and their info about their historical designations in this new table, Table L. Then on tables A and A2, we've also added a new field for historic sites where you can indicate if any of the housing projects you're reporting on table A and A2 are on one of the sites that has been received a new historic designation. This is just a yes or no field that you will fill out. We assume it will be very rare that you have projects located on sites with new historical designations, but wanted to make you aware of this field just in case it occurs. So to recap, Table L should list all of the sites that have been given historical designations in your jurisdiction, not just ones with proposed housing development, but it should only list the sites that have been given designations within the reporting year of 2025, not every single site. Next, we have new statutory requirements regarding opportunity area tracking of housing projects. So starting in the 7th cycle, statute now requires APRs to track the opportunity area designation for each project that a jurisdiction reports. These opportunity areas come from the Opportunity Area Mapping Tool, which is published annually by the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee and HCD. It is linked on this slide and contains good information about neighborhood resource level throughout the state. But the very, very important thing, if you are representing a jurisdiction, that you need to take away from this slide is that this does not require any additional work on your end. HCD has built an internal system that will track this data based on the locations of the project you report on your APRs. And then we will report out the data about the opportunity areas of these projects on a new page on the APR dashboard that will be available by June 2026. So no additional reporting work required for jurisdictions. Next, we have enhanced housing element program reporting requirements that we've included in Table D, which are very important this year. And to talk a little bit more about those, I will turn it over to Fidel.
Thank you, Isaac. Yeah, HCD through the Housing Element Implementation Program has been proactively monitoring approved housing elements with a focus on programs that were critical to why a housing element was found in substantial compliance. We have been prioritizing jurisdictions based on Council of Governments due date and then based on RENA. So submitting a thorough and complete Table D is key to our review, as we're using Table D as a starting point for monitoring those programs. So it is very critical that jurisdictions include updates not only on all programs and commitments, not only all programs, but also all commitments within each program. Programs that include more than one objective should include a status for each of those objectives. When a program or objective is complete, we suggest that please include the ordinance or resolution number that was adopted or other relevant documentation. For instance, include a link if possible. Provide as much information such as the number of units that were completed, dates of approval, and other information to demonstrate that the program was complete. You don't know how easy this is. Makes it easier for us when we're monitoring these programs, when we open a APR and it has all this information. Otherwise, we're going to be contacting jurisdictions and asking for this information. So please be as thorough again as possible in completing not only Table D, but the APR as a whole. And with that, I'll pass it over to Kevin, who will go over all items that need to be reported on Table D, including the new requirements.
Yeah, thank you, Fidel. And so, yeah, as Fidel said, now we're going to the Kevin's form walkthrough. As he gets his screen up to share, the APR form for that walkthrough, just wanted to remind that any questions you have so far, please continue to ask them in the chat. We see a lot of good questions have already come in. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Hi, thanks, Isaac. Hi, everyone. And thanks again for joining us after a holiday. Now I'm going to do a little bit of a walkthrough to show you how to access the form, download it, and then open it. And then we're going to click through the form and show some examples so you can get a little more familiar. So right now, hopefully you all can see the APR webpage. This is where you're going to get the form. There was some confusion last year. We launched a new portal to upload APRs and housing element information. The form itself is located here, as well as detailed instructions and an FAQ. So you're definitely going to want to have those two resources handy as you're going through the form. So when you click on the form, it's going to open it in the browser. You don't want to work on it in the browser. Sorry, I got move some presentation stuff that's in the way. So you're going to want to click download file. And then when you navigate to the file, before you open it, you're going to want to right click on it. And then you're going to want to check this box to unblock. Just allows some features that are important to the functionality of the form. So then you're ready to go. So now let's look at a copy of the form. And as you can imagine, you'd start at the Start Here tab. So I'm going to go through you see a lot of tabs and sheets at the bottom. I'm going to go through the most common and the required ones. And the other ones are not used as often and haven't changed. since the previous year. So start here. You're going to provide your jurisdiction, the APR year using the dropdown, and then basic contact information. This is all required, but it's simple to provide. And then you'll notice in column F, there are a couple additional tools. For those of you who are already familiar with the APR, there's an importer. So if you have already been tracking some data over the course of 2025, you have a draft of the form, but now it's the older version of the form, you can use the importer tool here, navigate to that draft, and then it'll upload it all in here. We're still, because there's been some significant changes, we're still ironing out some issues there, some minor issues, but we're hoping to have those straightened out this week. And if you have any issues with the importer, please just let us know, because we want to save you the trouble. There's a link here to the instructions, but you already know where those are. And then for the larger jurisdictions, you can add rows and tables A and A2 if you exceed the default 1,000 row count. Those are big APRs. Cool. So now I'll start. So you did your start here. You're looking good. Now we're going to go click through to table K. Now table K, this one gets missed because it's off to the side a little bit. I would start here because it's really easy and it's required. It's a yes or no. Does your jurisdiction have a tenant preference policy or not? If it's no, using the drop down, you're done. If it's yes, you'll get asked for a link to that policy. And here's this is also a nice little example to see how the formatting and the highlighting when it's operating as it should, that will kind of guide you. Once you've put some information, it'll also say like, hey, we're going to need more information over here. Now, Isaac already talked about the changes to Table D. Fidel talked about the importance of it. I'm going to give a couple examples. So yeah, it has expanded quite a bit. It was previously 4 columns. Now you can see there's 9. I'll just click through in this example program of from a jurisdiction where they were tracking sites to meet their RENA. So they have the name and they have the objective in the first 2 columns. Those are the same as previously included in the form. Now, instead of like a general status, we're asking for a specific date for that program. If it was completed as a date that happened, and if it's still in progress, it's an anticipated date. Then we want the relevant cycle. This is a dropdown. We try to do dropdowns as much as possible and make it easy for you. So I use the 6-cycle dropdown. This program is in progress. This is a program that'll take place over the course of the whole 8-year planning period. So that's why the end date is the end of the planning period here in this example. Then we added these quantified outcomes. So there's a category. You'll select a category. Units, households, persons, meetings, or other. And the next example is other. But for now, we're doing units. We're tracking sites for the RENA allocation, those units. And the quantified outcome here in this example is just the total RENA for that jurisdiction. I'm coming to you from Ridgecrest, California, so I'm using Ridgecrest as an example. And then supporting documents is just a link. And for this other example, this was an ordinance on replacing demolition, so requiring that any demo was replaced by the same or more units. And so the date, this was marked completed with the dropdown. The date was, this sample or example date is just, hey, they did it in 2025. And other here, since it depends on the units that are demolished, we put the other as the quantified outcome as the ordinance itself. So other, and then there was 1. So that's Table D. This is required, and as Fidel explained, this is really important, and this prevents a back and forth in the future with our housing element team if they want more information regarding those significant programs that found you in compliance. Got a thing in the way here. Let's see if I can. There we go. All right, now tables A and A2. They're not required if you haven't had a housing application, or in A2 it's entitlements, permits, or certificate of occupancy, but it's generally most folks are going to be doing a lot of work in here. So, and there was a new field, but we'll just go through an example here. So, oh, and what I want to emphasize is that there's some overlap. Depending on the activity and when it happened, you may be reporting something in A and A2 for that year, and that's what's going to happen with these examples. So with this first example, I just have a basic single-family home, simple information: APN, street address, local tracking ID. So I'm using the drop down here for the structure type. Anticipated it being owner, and then there's an application submission date. There has been confusion in the past on what it means, because we say we want the completed application date. That means that the application, everything that is required for the jurisdiction review is there. That means, let's say on Monday, the developer submitted the application, but they forgot a signature, or a couple of pages were missing. So then jurisdiction let the developer know, hey, we need this information to go forward with our review. Developer sends it back Thursday. That's the Thursday date is what we want. It doesn't mean a completed activity like a completed permit. So it just means that that's the date they got a version of the application that they can go forward and review. And here below I have an ADU, and this is happening on another parcel. But let's say this is something we get asked about a lot. What if they were on the same parcel? We'd want it split out the same way. We would want the single family home on one line and then the ADU on the second line, even if they're on the same parcel. So I have my home in there. I have an ADU. Now I need to report the income category. So say it's a large single family home that's being built. I'm going to assume it's above market rate. For the ADU, I'm actually going to put moderate, non-deed restricted, and I'm going to have a robust explanation for that in Table A2 that we'll look at. So now here's that helpful highlighting. So now these are just required fields. A lot of them with drop downs. So was there any streamlining, like SMAP, which also used to be known as SB35? I'm going to say none, but even that none is required. Now, oh, kind of froze there for a second. Here's that new historic site category that Isaac mentioned. I'm going to say no, it's not a historic site. Did they seek incentives? Nope. And then they didn't seek any incentives, so that's NA. And then the status, this was approved, and I'll put ministerial. And it would be, let's say it's the same for the ADU. And so since these two projects were submitted applications and they were approved in 2025, I'm also going to say that they were issued a permit in Table A2. So we're going to have those same projects here in Table A2. That same information, basic stuff, structure type, tenure. And then I have my income information, but here, this is the entitlement section, so I'm not going to put anything here, because these projects didn't require an entitlement. We went straight to the building permit. So here are my building permits, or here are my affordability categories, not calculations. Above mod for the single family home, and then ADU. And then I have this date here now. This is when the building permit was issued. And now let's keep on these. Table A and A2 are kind of wide, so you want to click through. Wide, probably not the technical term, but let's go with it. And so very similar to Table A, here's a single family home, no streamlining, not historic. And then I'm going to say yes or no, was it infill? I'm going to say yes. So ADU would be a similar thing. But what you'll see is, I'm going to remove this real quick. You should copy it, so you can see the highlighting. When that's not there for the ADU, since I indicated a income category below above moderate, I was also required to provide that explanation here in column AZ. So I would provide these basic ones, this basic information about streamlining, infill, and historic sites, but then also I would put the explanation here for affordability that now disappeared. Oh, that's great. That's why I stick to the script, folks. But what I had here was based on the square footage, I had a 600-foot ADU that was a studio based on square footage, and the I guess you can go back to the recording at least. Based on the square footage and the bedrooms, it was a studio. And also I used the HCD affordability calculator, which on our APR page. And then also I was going to, I mentioned that I was using a countywide market rate study that demonstrated that, maybe it looked at other new market rate studios and found that those studios were even on the market sold their affordability levels other than above mod. So you want to have a robust explanation there. And then lastly, we'll do one more. Try to be quick here. So let's do a mixed income deed restricted multifamily development. And we're going to assume that the application was in 2024. It's already been reported in that APR. Now, what happened in 2025 is they were issued an entitlement. So, we'd add an address here. I'll just type a few numbers, the ID, and then here we do structure type for 5+. That's our multifamily, and then we're assuming it's going to be rented. I have my income categories here. So we have 10 very low income deed restricted units, 10 low income, and 10 above mod. And here's the date that the entitlement was issued. Now, if say that application happened in 2025, then that would be reported in this table A, but we're assuming it was 2024. So then we can skip building permits that hasn't been issued yet and certainly not completed for the certificate of occupancy section. We've seen that this information, I'll throw it in there real quick. No streamlining, no historic resource. It is, yes, it's infill, but now we need to report the affordability, the assistance programs. And this is a multi-select, so we could say, hey, it got a low income housing tax credit, and it got some funding from HCD that says multifamily housing program. And then also we're going to say it was a density bonus project. Well, now that I've hit density bonus, now these fields are also required. So more detail on that density bonus, the density bonus details for that project. If it was, let's say, inclusionary instead, then, oops, it just selected both. Let's go back, clear it. And now it's just inclusionary. We don't need that density bonus information. So that's where the highlighting can be helpful. So hopefully that gets you a little familiar with table A and A2. And of course, we're always around to help if you have questions. One other table I will look at real quick is table B. Once you put in your jurisdiction, this is how you can track your RENA progress. Once you put your jurisdiction in the Start Here tab, this will generate all your planning period information, and this will also generate your RENA numbers and your RENA progress as reported in previous APRs, primarily permits in table A2, issued building permits in table A2. So as you can see here, I only have the 2 permits. That was the single family home I reported and the ADU. The multifamily project, those were entitlements, so those aren't going to appear in table B. And I think that's most.
Kevin, we got a question about, just to clarify, the unblocking, the process of when you first open the form, going to properties and checking unblock. Could you just quickly go through how that looks for you again?
Yeah, we can do it live. Here, I'll click here. It's nice to have it already up for our presentation, but we can do a live one. Click download file. Let me see. Actually, I might have to drag and drop from my downloads. I don't know if you're going to see my downloads window. So let me see. Isaac, did you see that new file drop in here?
Yes.
Okay. So here it is. I right click, go to properties. Oh. And well, this one's saying I don't need to unblock it. But around here, it would say unblock, and there would be a checkbox. You would just hit that checkbox and click apply. Maybe because I just unblocked one, it it didn't cause an issue. And also, it may also depend on your organization's security features. So, but you'll know if something's wrong because you'll have all kinds of banners on your spreadsheet saying, you know, certain features aren't enabled and that sort of thing. But you want to right click properties, check unblock.
Is it safe to say that if if like that option is not coming up for someone on the properties, if they don't have a box to click to unblock, that they would be fine to go ahead and use the form?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think so. And then they can just go ahead and open it. Oh, the other thing I was
I
going
think
to
we
talk about
covered.
was HTTP Connect. Um, that is below where you see the form and instructions and everything. That's our online portal where you can submit the APR on your own and see previous submissions and access to your data. Some of your data, also housing element submission portal. My webinar last year went into that in more detail. That's still going to be available, I think. Even after we add this one, that'll be in the tools. But basically, what you're going to want to do is click this HCD Connect link. That's going to take you to this landing page, and you go click create an account. You'll add some initial detail. You'll want to select local government for your role type. You'll provide this information. You'll get a link. You click the link. You create a password, and there might be some more steps. But we also have these HCD Connect portal guides. And so those will walk you through creating an account, managing a consultant account if a consultant submits on your behalf, and also how to submit the APR itself. Your accounts, a consultant account, and then the submission. And I think that should I stop my share, Isaac, and then we can see. Then a couple more things before I pass it to LCI. There are the links. So you can go to follow the HCD Connect login, create your account. And then there's the help guides. Next slide. Revised APR. So you can submit revised, say you forgot a year or you forgot some projects in a previous year, you can resubmit. We ask that you would have to do that via email. You can't do that through the portal. You go through our APR inbox. So go through the APR inbox, use the current version of the form. That's where the importer is helpful if you were working with an older version. And then just allow us a little more time because there's some tricky ins and outs of a revised APR. Next slide. And then lastly, shout out to our dashboard. The APR data, with your help and your hard work, we get a really awesome data set that's pretty unique for the country. So here's one of my favorite visuals from the dashboard, but you can play around and see how all housing permits by structure type, by affordability level, by every jurisdiction or COG or at county level. So very cool. Next slide. And then if you want the raw data of everything reported, and this is you could get everything reported in Table A, all the applications or all the permits in Table A2, go to the Open Data Portal. Okay. Thank you, LCI, for your patience. I'll pass it to y'all to talk about the general plan APR.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Kevin and Isaac, and all of HTD for letting us crash your webinar and be on. And thank you, everyone, for being on to learn about LCI's process a bit. So we really appreciate the time to hear from you. My name is Patricia Kennedy. I am the program manager for our policy unit. That includes CEQA policy, policy innovation, and planning. The Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, formerly OPR, or the Office of Planning and Research. So you might hear those or might be more familiar with OPR. So LCI is the state's planning agency, and it serves at the discretion of the governor. We have some pretty unique roles as a state agency compared to some of the other agencies. We are not a regulatory agency. We consist of several programs, including CEQA policy, climate research and planning, and of course, local long-range planning. LCI's planning and land use team manages the APR as part of our policy unit, and then that's kind of all housed under the state clearinghouse. Our core function for the planning team is to advise on long range planning. And this includes a lot of different things, right? Developing guidelines and technical advisories. Hopefully, you're familiar with some of these, but our general plan guidelines, as well as other TAs like the SB 1425 open space TA, the evacuation planning TA, our tribal consultation guidelines under SB 18 and AB 52. So all of these actually that I just listed, we're currently undergoing either development or updates. If you're interested in any of these efforts, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. But today we are here to not talk about those. We're here to talk about the APR. So we also provide technical assistance such as answering legislative questions, approving general plan extensions, and then of course the local government reporting, which includes the APR or the annual planning report. I'm going to get this wrong. And the APS, the annual planning survey. I might get that wrong, so I'm going to hand it to Nils in a minute to correct me. Yeah, so with that, I guess I just wanted to say thank you all for letting us be on. We look forward to hearing from you and learning from your experience and seeing how we can, make the most of the data that we get from you and in a really meaningful way. So with that, I'll hand it over to Nils Jepson, our associate planner on our team, to walk through LCI's APR process.
Thanks, Patricia. Yeah, so a lot of this will be revisiting what folks who have done general plan APRs in the past already know. So kind of just going over the basic requirements and some ideas for how to approach the APR, because for us, it is pretty open-ended. So just really quick, starting off with what is a general plan. As most of y'all know, state law requires that all California cities and counties adopt general plans, which include these 7 mandatory elements. So that's land use, circulation, housing, conservation, open space, noise, and safety. And yeah, it's basically supposed to serve as a blueprint for your community's long-term vision. In addition, some communities are required to do an environmental justice element if they have identified disadvantaged communities in their jurisdiction, and then air quality element for jurisdictions within the San Joaquin Air Pollution Control District. Next slide. So what is the general plan APR? As Isaac mentioned, all jurisdictions are required to provide LCI and HCD with separate general plan and housing element APRs by April 1st of every year. The general plan APR submitted to LCI should kind of outline the status of the general plan and its different elements and progress and implementation of its goals for a given year. That year can be either fiscal or calendar, depending on your jurisdiction and what you guys choose. The general plan APR must be presented to the local legislature for review and acceptance before submitting to LCI. And we'll get into this a bit later as well. But for this year, similar to last year, we will only be accepting APRs through our online submission form, which will be live on the LCI website January 5th, 2026. Next slide. So yeah, so here's some things to keep in mind while you're working on the APR. There is no standardized form or format that is required. So depending on the needs of your jurisdiction and your policies and kind of how you have set up your implementation goals for your general plan, that should kind of reflect itself in the APR. It doesn't need to include all elements if some were not worked on that year, but should include a summary of activities for all the elements that were implemented, not just the housing element. And then the jurisdiction should report on planning activities when undergoing a comprehensive general plan update. So how are you updating your conservation element, to comply with SB 1425, and what policy measures are you doing for that? So next slide. So although no standard format or template is required, there is certain info that should be easily found within APR submitted to us, so we can kind of find these different sections. This includes, but is not limited to, the reporting period. So as I mentioned, fiscal or calendar, the date of presentation to the legislative body, the last update of each element. So when was the open space element last updated for your jurisdiction, and then the next planned update for every element. Next slide. Yeah, so here are some questions that we put optional, again, up to y'all on how you want to approach this, but we thought these were kind of helpful questions to ask yourself as you start to put all this together. So which parts of the general plan were implemented over the last year? What has changed or was introduced in the past year that has then impacted your local land use policy decisions? How does the general plan comply with LCI's general plan guidelines? For example, environmental justice, tribal consultation, or new transportation laws. And side note, as Patricia mentioned, we're also updating these, which is really exciting. And then how can this information be presented in a manner that is useful for the public? Next slide. So some more recommended APR content. Some information that can be prioritized can include legislative priorities, specific reference to different planning activities, which can include, but is not limited to specific plans, neighborhood plans, general plan amendments, approval of major development applications, and environmental assessments. And then if the information is available, you can also include different kinds of interagency coordination that you're doing to complete these policies, different mitigation measures for your general plan EIR, and then different equity planning considerations that you feel are important for all of your policies. Next slide. A local government can also include strategies for infill and compact development, preserving of agricultural land and environmental resources, depending on whether you're an urban or rural jurisdiction or suburban, economic development, and then how are you specifically accounting for long-term growth patterns. Next slide. So some last things, you can also include content on how you're improving technical assistance to folks that are applying for development applications. How are you managing your data? What systems are you using? And then different kinds of grant administration or other forms of administration that are impacting your jurisdiction's general plan implementation. Next slide. Yeah, so as we kind of went over, after you do your APR and have it reviewed by the legislative body, you will need to submit one copy to LCI and then one to HCD by April 1st of 2026. Next slide. This year we have consolidated ways to submit the APR. So similar to last year, there was only one way to submit the general plan APR to LCI specifically, which is via our online submission form. I see Patricia put a link in the chat, but that's where the submission form will be, and it will be up on January 5th, 2026, if you're ready to submit then, and will be up the whole year. Next slide. Yeah, so these are some of the questions that submission form will be asking. In 2022, we added most of these for administrative purposes, and these were questions like, is the submission on behalf of a jurisdiction that is a charter city? Is it a resubmittal? So as we mentioned, have you submitted it before, but it was then approved by the legislative body and you're resubmitting? What is your reporting period for the submission? So fiscal or calendar. When was the last major update for each required element, and when is the next major update? I will note that for this year, we'll also be adding some additional questions around how we can make the process more transparent and standardized. We've heard a little bit on, people want more direction. It's hard because there isn't really a standard way to do this. So over the next few years, we'll be thinking about ways to standardize this and make kind of the submission more transparent to y'all and more aligned with HCD as well. So yeah, so as a reminder, this is where you will find the submission form, which we just added on the LCI website. Next slide. And then to submit to HCD, you will email it to this email, apr@hcd.ca.gov. So email to HCD's submission form for LCI. And then some final reminders. Charter cities are required to submit their general plan APRs. There are no penalties for submitting general plan APRs after the deadline. So as I mentioned, the link will be open all year long. If you are going to miss the deadline because you're waiting for your APR to be reviewed by the local legislature, you can submit it without the review and then resubmit it afterwards. And then one last note, LCI is tasked with notifying a city or county if a general plan has not been revised within 8 years, and will notify the Attorney General if a general plan has not been revised within 10 years. So yeah, next slide. Just some helpful links. Again, these should all be in the chat. And yeah, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We are happy to answer and walk you through the new process, and hoping to continuously streamline everything and make this easier for everyone involved. And I think now we're on to questions.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Nils. Thank you, Patricia. And thanks everyone for listening to our presentation. Now toss it over to Farzad to introduce some questions for discussion that have been coming up in the chat throughout.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Isaac. And just confirming everyone can hear me. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Farzad Mashoud. I'm our unit chief in the Data and Innovation unit in HCD. We have a couple questions here that are good for us to discuss. We've been answering to a number of questions in the Q&A. Thank you for having them come in. Please keep coming. I want to start with a question about the justifying affordability for accessory dwelling units as kind of the broader question here. The specific question is wondering for jurisdictions that use ABAG's ADU affordability breakdown, how do we incorporate the new affordability thresholds? And to confirm, do the new thresholds start this year or the next cycle? So one thing just I do want to first note is that I'm aware of ABAG preparing a new ADU affordability study that will be published in the coming weeks or months in time to be used for 2025 APR submissions. So if you use ABAG's ADU affordability study, please do work with them to use their updated affordability study. Our instructions also note that ADU affordability studies should be no more than 2 years old. But I wanted to also toss it to Kevin if you wanted to speak to any more detail about how we use ADU affordability studies and affordability breakdowns in the APR form.
No, I think that covers it, Farzad, and from what I know about the upcoming ABAG study, ELI was going to be a category that they are looking at, and so that leaves the question of acutely low that might not be in there, and it just might mean you leave those out base if you're using the ABAG study. But yeah, the most important thing for Farzad is, like you said, the over 2 years or older. So they have a new one coming out. You make sure you're using the most up-to-date studies. Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin. I wanted to also take some time to discuss Table D. Thanks, Fidel, for responding to a couple of the Q&A points, particularly about, yes, you do need to include all housing element programs in your Table D. And also thank you, Fidel, for addressing the question about dates. Just first, I wanted to check if there was anything else, Fidel, that you wanted to touch on with Table D. So feel free to come off mute if there is.
No, I think, well, if folks have questions, I know that primarily, I think the big questions on Table D is that there's most common is that there are a lot of programs that have different commitments and different dates within each of those programs. So one of the questions, I think it was like, which date do we include? And so just include the date that is the most recent to when it will be completed for implementation. And then you can elaborate on their program implementation details regarding other commitments within the programs. But it's important that you, within the program details, provide the information on which of those commitments have been completed and which are in progress.
And Fidel, we just got a question briefly about how do you address ongoing programs, which I believe that's ongoing is one of the time options in the form. Is that right?
Yeah, ongoing. I would just put in a date as like, typically we just put in a date of like 12/31 of the previous year or something like that, because I don't think there is something, or is there, Kevin, for ongoing? They still need to include a date, I imagine, right, Kevin? And so just include the date, the December 31st of the previous year. For instance, in 2025, you would just include 12/31/2024 for when you report this next year. And basically what you're doing for those is typically including what's the updates for that program for 2024 if there was an update for those, because typically ongoing means that every year there's some sort of commitment that needs to be done. And so just include what is the update for the previous year. In this case, it would be 2024.
Thanks, Fidel. And Isaac, I'd like to invite you to speak about another one of the table D questions about how the information is imported, or if it
Yeah.
can be imported.
Yes, that's a good question, because you noticing that there's, the additional columns might make it a challenge to be able to just easily import all the programs that you had in your previous year's APR. We are currently working on updating the importer on the APR form so that basically there are three columns that map on to columns that existed in the APRs for previous years. So name of program is the same, objective is the same, and then status of program implementation from last year will map onto program implementation details field for this year, which is sort of that open-ended response of status update of the program. So we're working on getting the importer to import those three fields for each program, so you won't have to relist every single program and its objective and its status if there's no updates. But you will, once you import those, you will have to manually fill out all the new fields, such as the date field for projected program completion date, applicable cycle, et cetera, et cetera. You will have to manually fill those out this year, and then in future years, now that we have the same columns, those will all be able to be imported.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add is copy and paste generally works by column. When you try to do a row, it runs into locked cells and it doesn't work. So even if having trouble with the importer for those columns in table D that are the same as they were before, you could probably copy all the names and paste all the objectives, paste, and maybe do something like that. And hopefully that could save you some trouble. But as Isaac said, we're hoping to get the importer working, and so it's as easy as possible for y'all to switch to this new version of the form. Oh, and I'll also add Control D is important. Control D is how you delete a row. If something went wrong and you want to just start over on a project, or for whatever reason, Control D will delete a row in A and A2 real easily and can be quite helpful.
Thanks so much.
And then for John France, I believe we want draft. Fidel, we want draft programs if it is not yet approved general plan or housing element, that we prefer draft than an approved housing element from a previous cycle.
I think the question is about submitting draft APRs.
Oh, sorry.
Whether they would be counted as submitted. Yeah.
Yes. If I wouldn't hold, if you're nearing the due date and it hasn't been approved by your governing body, just go ahead and send it to us. And then notify us later if when obviously if it's changed, send us a new copy, but just let us know that it went to your legislative body. Maybe send us the what do you call it, the schedule or the meeting details. But don't miss it. If you have an APR that's ready to go, don't miss it because it hasn't gone to your governing body yet. Send it to us.
Are there any other questions? Well, if not, just want to remind everyone again, the materials are online. This recording will be posted. Will also be an e-blast going out very, very shortly, with a wealth of details on HCD's APR process. And the deadline to submit your 2025 APRs, of course, is April 1st, 2026. And we really, really want to encourage and emphasize that. And please do reach out to HCD if you have questions. Do take advantage of Isaac and Kevin's office hours, which will be the last Friday of every month.
We got a
again,
new
all this.
question in
Oh,
the
yeah.
chat on corrections to ADU affordability for the prior year.
Yeah, I think maybe the broader question even here, this is a great question. Thanks, Isaac. The broader question, that let me kick it over to Kevin, is what do we say when someone wants to correct an APR? Or revise an old APR?
I mean, early in the game, if you think you can get that fixed, before you do the 2025, maybe just work on that now. If it was closer to the deadline, I would say just focus on 2025. Once that's out of the way, we have you submitted, then go back and resend 2024. So it's up to you. If it's not an intensive change or fix, go for it now. Otherwise, I would focus on the current year, and then we can process, because that ends up happening anyways when we get revisions in the height of the season. We're prioritizing we're going to be prioritizing 2025 APRs as that April 1 deadline approaches. So you may as well maybe hold off till then. I guess it depends, but I'd say reach out if you have other questions. Just let the inbox know. We can help you out.
Great. Well, again, thank you all so much for being part of this. And please look out for additional details from HCD. Anything else, Isaac, you wanted to say to close us off?
No, I think that's it. Yeah, thank you very much for joining. And as always, email us or email LCI with any outstanding questions you have or questions that you think of later down the road. So thanks, everybody.
Nils, Patricia, anything?
No, thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you all.